Hi, my name is Alexander Harris. I'm going to be taking us through the team project demonstration for the Crowdsourced Travel Planner. This team is made up of Jake Corabellis, Alexander Harris, Coldley McGrath, Kevin Wen, and Ying Zhang. The Crowdsourced Travel Planner travel app that we built allows users to discover, plan, and share their next great adventure. Basically, it's a way of saying, here's an experience I had, you might be interested in it too, and allowing users to build a trip out of those experiences and plan a new trip off the beaten path for them. Very briefly, I'm going to take us through a demonstration of the project, and I'm going to cover the best parts. So that's going to be the ability to discover experiences from other folks, to manage a trip made up of those experiences, and to create your own experiences. So without further ado, here is the demonstration. So this is the login page of the application. There's a way to register for an account, or if you already have one, you can log right in. The main utility that this application provides to users is to give them a way to discover new experiences that other users have created and shared in the application, and to be able to see the ratings on those experiences as they're looking at them. So this is the Discover Experiences page, lays out all of the different experiences that have been added here, including titles, descriptions, and ratings. And I have the ability to look for a particular geography here. If I'm planning an upcoming trip into a location, I can search and look. And then we also have keyword searching. So we can go nature, experiences, everything that's tagged as a nature experience. Experiences themselves show the details of picture, all of the information here, and offer the ability to rate. The second thing that users are going to benefit from is being able to plan a trip. So they can build a trip out. This one is an example of a trip to Portland with my brother, and assign experiences to that trip so that they have one place where they're looking and seeing what are those different things that I want to do, and can come back and look and see the details of that. Finally, the social aspect of the application here is the ability to share your own experiences. So here's one that I created ahead of time. I've gone ahead and entered all of my information on it. I can go ahead and put a nature tag, and I can update. And of course, I've also got the ability to create those from scratch. So our highlights here are really being able to see new experiences that others have created, to plan a trip out of those experiences, and then to be able to share your own experiences, and rating those experiences are interwoven between. Thanks. Moving on to how each of us contributed to the development process of this application, I'm going to start with Ying here. Ying was our front-end design and development expert for the application. She tackled really all of the pages of the application and the look and feel, and did a really good job of delivering high-quality work there. She did the thing that I really appreciated, which was produce those pages using mock data to start, and then iteratively develop and wire in the functionality from the back end to bring those pages to life. It worked really well. Technologies that Ying called out is the JavaScript React framework for the dynamic web UI there. TypeScript for the JavaScript to add in static typing. Tailwind CSS for styling, and the Django REST framework and the REST API layer for the backend. Stages of development for Ying looked like requirements gathering and planning based upon our team discussions and initial sketches. Then doing the initial development with the mock data and refining that over time in an iterative way. Doing the integration and logic implementation with the backend, and then doing a final iteration, change implementation, and polish work on the UI. Original plan for Ying was to handle the UI work, and she didn't have any deviations from that. And she thought that was due to the clear task assignment and project structure we put in place up front. Some of the challenges that Ying faced revolved around the size of our team. There's a lot of us working on this and doing PRs, trying to split work up, and that was a new process there that just involved a little bit of learning curve. Similarly, we had a CI/CD pipeline and Docker containerized development process for this, and those were newer experiences for Ying, and so she worked through those, learning as much as she could, asking others for assistance, reaching out to other individuals she knows to kind of help build those skills. She gained experience in two key areas, technical expertise and team collaborations, and then building our UI in this scalable front-end architecture way, and having the kind of full stack, seeing how the API connects to the UI, the back end, were some of those things that Ying really worked through and are taking away as good experiences from this project. Moving on to the development overview for Jacob. Jacob did work on both the front end and the back end of the application, mostly around authentication and around the search functionality for experiences. There's a whole list here on the slide of the different things that Jacob contributed to, but most of them are around search and authentication, as well as some pagination and filtering. The technologies used are the same stack that the rest of us worked on. So that's the Django backend, the React front end, using Docker for our DevOps to run locally, Postgres SQL for the database, and then GitHub for version control. Jacob's steps in development were moving through the auth work onto the front end work around the front end auth, the geocoding, and then finally moving on to the pagination. So just kind of working through each one of those features individually and delivering it into our shared environment so all of us could use the changes, integrate them as we moved forward. And then the original plan, Jacob had some deviations. Initially, the first one was around timing. So he originally identified working on the authentication backend, then planned to move to the geocoding and then wiring the authentication into the front end. However, he made an adjustment so that he did the front end authentication work shortly after the backend so that the rest of us could use it and then moved on to geocoding. Secondly, he identified a necessary feature to do reverse geocoding and implemented that. Wasn't part of the original plan. Jacob identified a couple of challenges around using Django and Docker as his first exposure to both of those, and it was a little bit tricky to get through all of the different error codes. And he used Copilot as a partner in understanding those errors and working through them, and that seemed to work really well. Jacob's takeaways for learnings from the process and project is knowing how Django's authentication system works, getting much more familiar with Docker and understanding that, and then being able to work in a version control best practice with a team and improving coordination and communication. Moving on to Colby's development contributions. Colby was primarily tasked with working on the back end of the application, so that's the API design, specifically around the CRUD functionality for trips and experiences. He also contributed to several other places of the application, and then did some work to help make sure that we were moving through our conflicts and standardizing our API as well. It's the same standard tech stack that the rest of us use, so the Django backend, the PostgreSQL for data storage, the React front end, Docker for local environment and development, and then GitHub for version controls. The steps for development for Colby began with project definition and requirements gathering, initial build out of the endpoints for those APIs, tying the database in and moving the live data from the front end of the app all the way through, and then working through the UI, fixing a few bugs, and making sure we were aligned on the final product. Colby's original plan was to do the trip and experience, create, read, update, and delete, and he pretty much stuck to that, as well as helping out with a few other places. Some challenges that Colby called out was that he was brand new to Docker and had to work through a series of YouTube tutorials and others online to get up to speed on that. And then also Git was very useful, but also prone to some errors and some strange error codes that he was able to work with AI to figure out what those meant and learn from it. Finally, a couple of takeaways for Colby from this process is the view of the full stack development experience, being able to build APIs, tie them into the front end, and then also some experience on project management and working in a team environment with Git. Kevin's development contributions were mainly around the ratings page, so both the front end and the back end for create, read, update, and delete functionality for that. He's got a video demo that we'll play right after this, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. The tech stack is the same that I've been covering in the other team members' contributions. And then the steps for Kevin in development were starting with ideation and building out requirements, moving on to the endpoints for the ratings for experiences, moving and incorporating those ratings functionality in along with other with the experiences, and then with other people being able to rate experiences, and then working on the geocoding framework with a few other team members. Kevin's original plan was to work on the ratings and geocoding items, and that's pretty much what he worked on. Some challenges that Kevin faced, so that was learning Django from the ground up. So he spent time looking online, practicing on his own, and then working with other team members to get up to speed on that. And then finally, he learned a lot about the Django framework and using Git in a team setting, as well as working within a team from a project management perspective. And that those experiences will help him become a better software engineer in the future.
Hi, this is Kevin White, and I'm here to demonstrate my portion of the assignments where it updates the ratings and provides an average. So, using this as an example template here, we're just showcasing that this is a trip to Hawaii, so this is the experience that we see in the experiences here. We can have this be rated. I already have an entry for this particular example, so to demonstrate, as we saw previously, there was a 3.5 for the stars there. But let's say trip. So we'll leave that there. And now, because this was my previous rating, this just demonstrates that there's no duplications possible, just to make it fair for folks when they enter in their experience. And as we see, this drops the rating value down just a bit more to 3.0. To showcase another example, here's one from Disneyland. Let's say we want to rate this one here, and we'll do something similar where, let's see, you showed more pictures of the ride. For example, when we want to leave a rating from a person, a new one gets implemented as we see here, and if we go back, we can see that, oh, this goes to 3.5. So going from 5, as we saw before, it is now down to 3.5 here. And that concludes my portion of the assignment. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Finally, my contributions to the development process. So I primarily worked on the image and keywords related functionality, as well as DevOps for this project. There are several other bug fixes and some functionality process and documentation and organization as well. It's the same tech stack that we've all been talking about, so the Django backend and the React frontend. I implemented a Docker file and Dockerized the application for better deployment and local development across the team, as well as using Render for hosting and Cloudinary for image storage. So the steps of development for me was working through the scope and requirements, making some major technology choices, implementing Docker, and then doing iterative feature work with regular testing and peer review for the images and keywords. The original plan had me doing the DevOps work, testing image functionality and the Surprise Me feature. I moved away from doing the Surprise Me feature to handle the more complicated keyword functionality that we initially overlooked in the project scope. So that was a good pivot, and traded off something that was a stretch goal for something that was a requirement of the project. So I'd never used Render before. That was probably the biggest challenge I had. And then we also had a protected main branch for our Git repository that auto-deployed to Render. Because we didn't have a production level staging environment, I spent a lot of time waiting for and badgering other team members for approvals for those pull requests that were attempting to fix issues in production. So that's something I'd improve in the future. But it worked okay for this. What I learned from this process, that the structured peer review is really excellent, points out issues and things that I overlooked. And then I also got a full cycle look at the development and deployment. And so then I left this project with a better understanding of what a platform as a service looks like in team environment. In conclusion, you might be wondering where things go from here. This project application is going to be an archive to showcase for each of us team members who worked on it. And each of us could choose to continue working on their own fork of the project, their own structure of it, but there's going to be no sustained continued team development or production deployment planned of this application. It's really just a capstone showcase. Thank you so much for your time today.